Back in the 1970s in Britain, we used our local shop so much more than we do today. It was a short journey, and it was almost part of our social contact with people. Albeit the supermarket was very much around, selling items slightly cheaper, your corner shop was a larger staple for getting shopping when you had little time, or when the big places were closed, particularly in the evenings and on a Sunday. They are part of our social history and connections with friends and neighbours. But what were we buying back then, on our budgets? And some of these items, are they available today? And how much or how many can you remember seeing in your pantry in the 1970s? OXO cubes, I know we can still get them today, but sometimes they sold them in separate cubes. So you could buy one or two as required, either whether you're on a budget or you just didn't need many more. They would open the box for you and sell them individually. Now I can remember buying 2 single cubes in 1978 for 2.5 each. Sandwich paste for Sunday tea. Paste pots, I think they called them. It was a small jar of paste, which was the poor man's pâté, in delicious or awful flavours: salmon and shrimp, beef and tomato, and chicken and something. Completely pulverised, fatty, cold meat that spread on your sandwich or your toast, and it cost around 21p in the mid-1970s. Shipham's was a brand that most of us can remember. Thoughts on this delicacy? Sliced bread was nothing unusual, but during the bread strike in 1974 and again in 1978, your local grocer was being fair to his loyal customers by simply splitting the loaves and selling half a loaf to make sure that more families didn't go without. People were rushing to buy bread mix to bake their own. I can very much remember the panic in families that couldn't live without bread. Brits are big sandwich eaters and rely on bread, more than most countries. But if there were a bread strike today, I doubt people would panic at all. Tins of everything was so much more popular back in the 1970s, with many poorer families not having freezers. Tinned potatoes, tinned green beans, and carrots and peas. They're very much on the supermarket shelves today, but back then they were an essential grocery list item. But what about those toast toppers, eh? Ham and cheese, chicken and mushroom, bacon and mushroom. Tiny little tins, but you could get 4 toasted sandwiches out of those tins. You remember sticking them under the grill? We had an eye-level one, and you could watch those toast toppers starting to bubble. And then the corners of the bread would start to go almost black. Then you knew that they were done. I don't know about you, but I thought they were amazing. They're no longer around in Britain. Still with tins, those puddings that you actually boiled in your saucepan whilst in the can. As long as you remember to pierce a couple of holes in the top of the lid to stop the thing from exploding. Heinz treacle sponge pudding, chocolate pudding, strawberry jam pudding and spotted dick. 59p in 1977, and they were delicious. Well, I'm not sure what you guys thought about the chocolate one, but it did seem a little bit dry. You can't get them now. And hey, you only had to remember one thing as well. When you were cooking these things, do not let the water boil away. They were great with a bit of custard. It really did fill your belly. Bird's trifle in a box. 3 packets and a clear bag for your hundreds and thousands, for sprinkling all over the top. Jelly powder, custard or blancmange. Then there was that false cream that they called dream topping. You made it up yourself by adding water or milk for that professional party trifle. Oh, and the sponge. Orange and banana, strawberry and a limited sherry flavoured ones for those extra special occasions. All synthetic, it wasn't really custard. There was no eggs, but the emulsifiers and monosodium glutamate really made that custard taste. They looked good, and we enjoyed them, and they were 37p in 1977. Only the strawberry kit is around today, but I hope the ingredients have changed. Now, my dad used to come out of the kitchen very proud when he bought this trifle to show us, and we all had to say wow, otherwise we wouldn't get any. Those tiny shops packed so much in them, and it was very rare that they didn't have anything that you wanted in stock. They knew the customers' first names. They gave credit, even though they had these signs saying credit will be refused and don't be upset. But they did give credit. Poor families like us relied on them, especially for milk and eggs and bread. You paid them at the end of the week and you respected them. But they never told anyone about your credit bill. They always whispered it to you. Vegetables and fruit, they were not pre-packed. They were all loose and you could buy one potato, one carrot and any item that you needed or could afford without any quibble. There was no waste, and I can remember buying a single apple for 2 pence in 1976. All your veg was in paper bags, no plastic required. Us kids always being sent to the shop and hope that we get a penny or two in the change to buy a chew or an ice pole in the summer. We called them tip-tops. They were a penny each. They were just frozen flavoured juice that acted like an ice lolly until you sucked all the flavour out, and then you just ended up with ice. Do you remember Jubblies? Have a look at this. I remember this embarrassing feeling, and I wasn't going to tell you about it, but I'm going to do. And I wonder how many kids were put through this process. Well, you were given a note from your mother and you were told not to read it but to hand it over to the shopkeeper. She'd look at me and she'd say, "I'll wrap it up in newspaper, but you mustn't open it." Always said in a whisper that you would expect, as if you'd had a trouser accident and you didn't want it broadcasted. Can you guess what this item was? Well, it was women's intimate time of the month apparel, and any kid saw you carrying that wrapped up item in newspaper already knew what you had been asked to get. The counter staff was sweet though. Dr. White's, if you remember him. Fresh loose tea. When you opened that packet it smelt wonderful. Brook Bond, and it always had a card. Was it PG Tips? The collectible cards would be in a series of vintage cars, space travel, flowers or inventors that us kids collected in those special books. But they were very informative, packed with information on the back of the cards, and I learnt a lot from them. William Caxton invented the printing press. See? Brook Bond had a stamp on the front that you could peel off. You collect your stamp and you put them on the cards, and when the card was full, you got a quarter of a tea for nothing. But a lot of people used to use that 17 or 25p to buy something else. Shopkeeper never minded. Messy to make though was fresh tea, and those bits of powder, when you poured your tea, would always remain at the bottom of the cup. Now, older folks today still leave a little tea in the bottom of their cups, even though we're using tea bags. Next is camp coffee. Right? Yes, we can still get it today. It was a liquid. Well, I say a liquid, it was more like a thick gravy that slowly poured out of your bottle, which contained chicory, which is a plant from the dandelion family. The roots were used to make chicory, which contains caffeine, to make the mixture. So Camp Chicory Coffee was introduced by Campbell Patterson in Glasgow in 1876. Now, I can remember seeing this on our kitchen table in 1971 with a price tag of 24.5p. It was not just a drink though. People baked cakes and flans with it. My sister went to school and she made a coffee flan using Camp Coffee. And it was absolutely bloody awful. In fact, I was as sick as a dog. Right, remember Smedley's, the canning company for foods, but they came up with canning sausage rolls in the 1970s. I have never had one, but I'm wondering if anybody else ever tasted one. It's an interesting one. Smedley's were established in 1924 in Wisbech and Spalding in Lincolnshire. Another food company doing canned foods was Lockwood's, who mainly did mushy peas, also based in Lincolnshire. Other tinned items that we bought were sardines and pilchards in tomato sauce or oil. Now, I wasn't a fussy eater, but I hated them. They are around today, but they're not sold anywhere as much as they were in the 1970s. They looked awful, they tasted worse, and they were a funny colour. How many people liked them? Or were they just kept for bad off days? Now, it was always my father's job when we used the corner shop to go back to the back of the shop and have a chat with the butcher, and he'd ask for pig's trotters, which he boiled, and they smelt terrible when they were cooking. I personally have never tasted them, but they were never an attractive meal in the first place. Also popular, and next to no money, was offal, such as kidneys and livers. Now they made meals for working class families, and the neck of lamb was made for stews. Tripe and onions was also something that we don't buy today. Does anyone miss it? It's boiled linings of animal sheep's stomachs. Now, if you were getting a stew for your dinner, pearl barley was always the bulk ingredient to stretch the meal out. Dried pearl barley was sold in boxes, and it's a versatile grain and had plenty of vitamins, but not a lot of taste. But it was great for thickening up stews. My mother used to put sage and onion in her stew, sage and onion stuffing, which added flavour and thickening. And the amount of meat in your stew depended on how much money you had that week. When was the last time you bought a Torah suet? Do you remember the advert? A Torah suet can do it. From your corner shop. Always in our pantry was a box of shredded beef fat that was used to make dumplings or to add crumble to your home-baked pastries. It's been around since 1893, but less popular today. But there is a vegetarian option available, a vegetarian beef fat. Boxes of pearl barley will be in your corner shop on the shelf, next to dried tapioca, semolina, and even dried peas and grey peas. Grey peas is something they have in the Black Country. They soak them for about 3 days, and then they add gravy mixtures and salt tablets and bacon, and it's quite a nice meal actually. Anyway, tapioca and semolina were a quick way to make a pudding by adding milk, cream, sugar, and just heating it up, and not forgetting that little bit of jam that you always put in the middle. Still available today if you look hard enough, but your corner shop always had them in stock. And another thought's just popped into my head. Those shops, those staff, always gave great cooking recipes, and the butcher was brilliant about giving ideas of how to store your meat, how long it's going to last, how to make it stretch, and how to make good meals out of it. That's a service. Cooked meats, they were sliced to how you wanted them. You could have it thick or thin, or ask for that exact amount that you needed, all wrapped in paper with no sell-by date and kept on a cold slab in your pantry. Nothing pre-packed, so no plastic waste. Or food waste either. They'd write the price on your bit of paper and the date that you bought it. In our family, it was gone the same day, so there was really no point. We were still talking in pounds and ounces too. Vesta meals, 22p in 1974. Our introduction to our exotic foreign food. It was a box with a fantastic picture of a curry, which you'd expect to get when you took it all out and you basically just added water and boiled it all up. It never quite looked the same, but it tasted okay, and it was sold in the millions in the 1970s. Today, you can get them from B&M for a couple of quid. Try one. It's like pot noodle, but without the pot. Oh, and without the rice. Sorry, I just absolutely love them. Right, winter was coming, and your local shop was ready for you. Firelighters to get your open fire started. There were a box of whitish solid blocks that were made up of flour, wood, and kerosene. And they were burned so hot to get your wood and your coal burning to quicken up that fire start in your living room. Your corner shop would always have little mounds of wood, firewood, and little bags of coal. Now the bag, a plastic bag full of coal, you just chuck the whole lot on, bag and all, and away your fire would go. And I've got to be honest, it would burn those embers for hours. And as kids, I used to love watching those dancing flames. It was better than watching that boring western on the TV, or worse still, upstairs and downstairs, you know, waiting for Kenny Everett to come on. Remember him? He was so funny. Firelighters changed in the late 70s to a vegetable wax compound. Now, with the power cuts that we had in the 1970s, these were an essential part of our home. And power cuts meant candles, and our local shops would have them in boxes of 10, 22p in 1976. Nothing special, just white candles for those power cut nights and those 3-day weeks. Matches, eh? How long has it been since we bought them? Bryant and May, 2p a box in 1976. For lighting the stoves or your fires, but we couldn't live without them. And as for cigarettes, well, they sold them to kids too. And they'd say, "Are they for your dad?" And you say, "Yes." But the fact that you were paying for them in pennies should have given them a little bit of a clue that they weren't for our elders. 10 number 6, 26.5p in 1978. My mother had Embassy and my dad had Golden Virginia tobacco in ½ ounce, all wrapped in gold foil. They always had a chest freezer in the 70s in your local shop to compete with the trends of people having fridges with small ice boxes in them. Maybe an Arctic roll or a tub of ice cream for the summer, or the odd box of frozen bird's eye burgers, or even those brand new crispy pancake rolls that my father actually deep fried. Everything was deep fried in our house. Sausages, fish fingers, all in lard. Kids felt so modern that when they had got that kind of stuff at tea time. They even sold carbolic soap for our grandparents, which was cut manually by the keeper, and Ajax or Vim to scratch your cooker, Windoline that covered your windows and all that dry matter that took weeks to get back off. Then those big glass jars of sweets that were weighed up in front of you on those manual scales, 2 ounce or £1/4 pound, and popped into paper bags. Too many to mention, but coconut mushrooms, chocolate flavour mice, humbugs, pear drops, cough sweets, sherbet in multiple colours, blackjacks, flying saucers. I could really go on. In fact, I am going on. Today you can go to these oldie worldy sweet shops and probably buy them, but they cost a hell of a lot more, and they've probably taken out all of those delicious E-numbers that we had back then. What was your favourite? I loved the rum and raisin fudge, but it always got stuck to the paper bag. Just in front of the counter were the sweets, Texan bars, Bar 6, Spangles, Old Jamaica, Aztec bars, and the Cadbury Dairy Milk bar, where few Cadbury Dairy Milk chocolates were all packed into one chocolate bar. I wonder if you remember them. My granddad bought me one of those when I was about 7, and it was delicious. There would always be boxes of chocolates behind the counter on a high shelf, such as Dairy Box, Weekend and Good News by Terry's of York. Crisps such as Tudor, Wackies, Snaps, Horror Bites, Space Invaders, all around 6p. And the 10p mix-up of sugar and more sugar, but we did exercise it off. Medication to some degree was at your local shop. Old wives' tales? Who knows? Indian brandy. Now that was a syrup-style mixture with a very, very low alcohol content, but it was for a gassy tummy or wind. It tasted foul. Andrew's liver salts, which was in our house, cured everything. But this little metal tin had a powder that fizzed when you added water. It would calm down heartburn and relieve constipation. It tasted okay. It's still available today, but not in those metal tins. You had to be lucky, but some days you will walk into your local shop and you'll find fresh cream cakes, but they sold out so quickly. So that's the local shop that we loved and needed and was always there to care and support us in our streets. It's dying out due to large supermarkets taking over and leaving us having to travel further for once was once around our corners. But if you remember these items, then it's good to have those memories and those moments to reflect. And I hope that I've been able to do that. Have I missed anything? Please let me know in the comments. Now, somebody's asked me to do this and I don't like doing it because I've always thought you want to enjoy my videos, you watch them and you move on to something else. But would you like to subscribe to my channel? Then you get to know what I'm putting out there and you can make all your comments and be notified of everything that's coming out. I normally try and make 2 a week. Now, I'm sorry about my voice. I think it's a bit of laryngitis. So I'm going to leave that and say thank you very much. See you soon and bye for now. Bye-bye.